Good afternoon, everybody. So actually, this is a sessions which we are conducting for exclusively for forensic science students, because unfortunately, due to this COVID situation, we are not in a position to physically take the students to so many practical places, especially about forensic lab, hospital, then chemical laboratory, handwriting expert cells. See, these are some of the important cells to which these students have to visit practically. But due to these situations, we are not in a position to take the students. And our respected principal ma'am, she always used to tell that even though there is no possibility to practically to take the students to the places, still we can conduct some webinar for these students with an expertise, so that they can actually how these particular cells in which the actual working functions which used to conducted or going on. So due to the inspiration of principal ma'am, I thought that I'll take this opportunity to conduct few webinars relating to some forensic departments to give pictures to the students. And first of all, I thank to management and respected principal ma'am to give me an opportunity to conduct some few webinars relating to this forensic science students. Actually, this is a course which we started for the first time, but really we are what we can say, a pleasure to say that we have started this particular course, and very few colleges which they started this course, and at the same time we are having a very good expert faculties in this forensic course. So note which I am telling to the students about, that whatever the sir who is explaining you people about this hospital authorities participation in case of forensic detection, completely you people note it down, and you have to write a clear report on this as far as your practical training paper is concerned. So now, with the permission of principal ma'am, I will proceed with the give a brief introduction of Rajendra sir. Rajendra sir, warm welcome to you.
Thank you, sir.
And if I start telling about sir, I don't think so. I have a time to say, because nearly about 2 to 3 hours it may require about sir's achievement. So I'll tell briefly about.
Sir, we lost your voice.
Sir done his MBBS course in the year 2000, and thereafterwards he started his practicing in various hospitals as one of the leading hospital, KEM Hospital, Pune, there in which he done his MD in Government Medical College, Aurangabad, and thereafterwards, sir published a n number of papers, so there's a list of papers. I don't have much time to read about these papers, publication of the sir, and at the same time, not only in India, even abroad, especially about Paris, US, in which so many conferences the sir attended, and got appreciated about his work done. And really it is what we can say, we are privileged to have sir today for this particular session, and few work of sir done in the field. I'll just mention to you people. See, nearly about 20,000 independent coronary angiographies are done. Okay? Nearly about 7,000 independent coronary angioplasties, including 100 primary angioplasties, complicated angioplasty, plastics, and including a bifurcations rotablation. Okay? So this is a really a wonderful work the sir who done in his professional career. And in addition to that, 100 pacemaker implantation, including a single chamber and dual chamber pacemakers, 50 ASD devices closure, and 35 PDA device closures work, which is done by the Rajendra sir. And bronchial artery embolization for recurrent hemolysis. Okay? It is a one of the rare work which is to be done by this medical field, but sir who attempted it. Various foreign body removals, endovascular, like left guide wire during the central line insertion. See, this is a kind of surgeries which the sir done in case of cardiology. Okay? And few balloon mitral valvometers, okay, which was also one of the rare case of attempt which is sir done. And in addition to that, list of work which the sir who attempted in his medical the field. And at the same time, we have to note about the sir is that about his simplicity. Whenever it is my personal experience what I am telling. So if a patient who approach the doctor, how the doctor who is to approach the student, that particular patient, you know, all good qualities which the Rajan sir is having in his book. So such is one of the wonderful person who is there with us today for his lecture. And my students, forensic students, are really lucky to have sir. And now, without wasting much time about explanation with respect to sir, and you yourself will witness what the sir is. And I am now requesting sir to start with this session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. First of all, with my warm regards and thanks to Dr. P.D. Patil sir, Chairman of D.R. Patil College, and Dr. Somnath Patil, our Management Council, and to the Ujjwala Shinde Madam, our Principal, who brought this platform. At the same time, to Lakshman sir, yourself, Punita Madam, and our Mr. Ajay, who coordinated all these activities and got me into this platform to share something. When sir asked me to give some thoughts regarding this topic, that role of hospital authority in forensic detection, ask what exactly sir want me to give that scenario to view. So then I decided, okay, let's give something like how hospital works and what is the functionality of the hospital it works. At the same time, some forensic thing to be keeping in mind. I'm keeping it much simpler. It's a very vague subject. It's a very huge subject. So every detail itself will be a sort of kind of textbook, it's kind of a lecture. So we'll keep it very simple, just to as an introduction for this topic, what we can see. Sir, can I share my PPT here?
Yes, sir.
You're able to see the PPT, sir?
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, going before that topic, I think every one of you must be very clear regarding these two terms. One is called as medical jurisprudence and forensic medicine. These are cousins of each other. Medical jurisprudence is the legal aspect of the medical practice, while forensic medicine is a medical aspect of the legal practice. So they are cousin to each other, both are complementary to each other, and one person who does the law, specifically in the medical field, and the person who is practicing the medicine, they should know all these two fields thoroughly, because anyway they will going to clash in your practice in the future. So it's sort of the discussion of my topic will go like this. Like first of all, I will just give the brief structure and how the workflow of the hospital goes. Second, the most important for us is how the structure and workflow of the any emergency department goes, like casualty, what we normally see. Third important is what are the legal issues normally faced in the emergency department. Again, that is one of the important. Few points about the consents, medical legal cases, medical records, and very few things about the medical negligence. So we'll go one by one. Really, 1 hour is very less for that, but let's see. This is our beautiful hospital where I work, D.Y. Patil Medical College, and at the same beside there is our D.Y. Patil Law College also. So this is a very beautiful space. Thank to Dr. P.D. Patil to establish such a wonderful structure. And to manage this kind of hospitals, it's not one person's job. Normally, what we see is only this clinical part. Okay, the patient are getting admitted, they are getting treated, but it is only one part of the hospital. There are many things in the hospital, like what you can say, like an industry. So everything like your statutory requirement, your administrative facility, your facility management, and clinical part. So everything comes to the hospital. So hospital comes, and normally what we think is only clinical part, but it is always require all these parameters to club up to maintain a very good hospital. Of course, when I say these parameters, there will be also different variations in different things. The workflow also will be depend on the person, like health administrative officers. They will look after maintenance, supply, support staff, accounts. Anyway, these are not our much of the things what we need. What we need is mainly on the clinical department, like medical officers, interns, nurses, everything, ward nurses, ICU nurses, the laboratory staff, pharmacy staff. So all these will combine together to form a good hospital. Second thing, normally we all know that which type of admissions come to the hospital. First is like OPD services, that we everyone know that we have some disease, we have some problem, we go into the hospital or we go into the clinic, we show to the OPD office basis, and from there, if admission is required, the patient gets admitted or is getting treated and they go home. Second are the routine admissions. Routine admissions are those like a diabetes and hypertension, like sugar control needs to be done, BP is high, that needs to be done. So that the routine admissions which clients normally admitted for investigations or planned surgery. And the third most important is emergency admissions. Unfortunately, last 1.5 years, what we have seen regarding this COVID outbreak, but with many of these emergency admission, and almost all of us have suffered from this, have witnessed this kind of admissions, and the chaos and the potential problems what we have faced for last 1 year, we are all witnessed that thing. So these kind of 3 admissions are normally taken care of. So that's why even though the hospital is very big, like you can say, the emergency department is always situated on one side, and it does most of the function. The OPD is on one side, the hospitals are admitted, elective work is on one side, there is imaging, there is lab, the ambulance service on one side, and this is the emergency department normally works, which is normally 24/7, and it is works in full functionality. I will say this is the most important part of any hospital, to work that hospital in a smooth fashion. As we know already discussed, like in OPD consultation. Can you tell me how to move this window away from shared applications? Okay. Yeah. Normally, what we are seeing this OPD consultations, then advice admission by the doctor. You go to the counter. The bed availability is seen. The patients getting admitted from the counter. They fill up the checklist and they get admitted. They done the procedure. So it's a routine thing. We are not interested in that. Second thing is the emergency department. Again, in the casualty. We know the patients can come from home, from urgent care system, from primary care system, staff, ambulances. From here, the segregation actually occurs. Sometimes they provide just telemedicine on the phone. The treatment is taken and patient can go home. They can solve their queries. Surgeries, there are some sometimes the surgery is required, then they are referred to surgeries. Some laboratories, some medical ICU, if it required, it is distributed like this. At the same time, most of our emergency care also is taken care here. And why I'm stressing about emergency, that will come to know as we progress. From here, the patients will be segregated to the hospitals, to various department, surgery, ward, ICU, and from there they will get treatment. So this is normally just the workflow of the hospital. So by this time you must be knowing that which is the most busiest area of any hospital is the casualty. It's the casualty, that is emergency medicine, what we normally call as the casualty. It is the most busy area. It is the most important area where every success of the hospital depends on your casualty, because these are the area where the maximum emergency treatment is taken care of, and the patient stabilizes here and then shifted to for further treatment and whatever is needed. And for our medical jurisprudence or medical forensic things, whatever medical legal cases are there, here is the first point of contact. So all the observations, all the notes, all the precautions, everything is to be taken care here itself. This is the first point of evidence, like what we call as FIR, first information report, that is done here. So this is one of the important things. So we should understand the working happens in the casualty. So what is an emergency? Anything which requires an immediate treatment, immediate attention of any physician, and it can cause a danger to the life, is called as emergency. The most common what we have known is the road traffic accidents, communicable diseases, cancer and cardiovascular disease. Communicable disease we have witnessed for last 1.5 years. Corona is for me one of the most important emergencies. Still it's going on. So these are the kind of emergency. And why emergency is important? Because timely and immediate interventions by any medicine trained person, it can save the life of the patient. And it's not one person job. It normally involves intensivists, the emergency medicine consultants, everything. Till a few years back, it was only a medical officer and the specialty was there. But from last few years, there is one branch which has been developed, which is called as intensive medicine or emergency care. So it's not only the medical officer, but it's a specialized branch also. Even our DY hospital, DY Patil, we have that specific branch, and they have post graduation in that. So that unit handles all these emergencies, so that can be taken care of. So it is the multidisciplinary approach. It's not a single person job. It's not only doctors. It involves your staff, nurses, and everyone. And why I said casualty is more important for us as a forensic, forensic person, because all polytraumas, all the poisoning, all drug overdoses or burns, assaults, gunshot injuries, drowning, everything, you name it, and that is taken care of the emergency. And these are the cases, most of the cases which are going to tackle in our future life as a expert in the forensic medicine. So the FIR of this, the first observation, the first treatment protocol, everything depends, and that is done in the casualty. This is a typical bed of any casualty. Here you can see one bed. Out of that is a defibrillation. Like if the heart is sinking, then you can shock the heart for defibrillation. These are the crash trolley. All the emergency medicines are kept here. These are the all sterile equipments like iodine and ether and everything is kept here. There are the sterile drums. So all necessary things like to take sutures and everything, it's kept here immediately. There are the oxygen tubes here. Immediately oxygen can be given. So this is a well prepared casualty. These are the light source, suction, everything is there. So in a small space, you have to be prepared for anything that can come in your hospital as an emergency. And that's why in casualty, the most priority is to save the life of the patient. And we should do everything possible to resuscitate the patient to ensure that he's out of danger. Now here you ask me the Munna bhai with this question, agar person mar raha hai to form bharna zaruri hai kya? So no, if the person is in emergency, all the legal formalities can be suspended, like admission, procedure, identification that can be suspended till the stability is achieved. Yes, if you have multidisciplinary approach, another team can take care of that thing. That okay, another person who is not involved in the acute emergency treatment, like your brother or second doctor, they can proceed with the formalities. But the main person who is doing the treatment, he should not wait for these formalities to happen. The life of the patient is most important. We'll come to this point again when the consent will come. So what is emergency? In emergency, there should be right treatment at the right time. Primary treatment, and he should go to the cath lab or cardiac department. So with the right resources, it should go. And that should happen with the speed. Because time is gold here, time is money. It should be with the sympathy. sympathy is also required because the patient, they are always frightened. What will happen? Their life is at risk. So the sympathy has to be there so that they should be calm, quiet, and the treatment will proceed smoothly. And at the same time, science, it should be scientific. It should be scientific for reason number one, it saves the life. Reason number two, we live in the medical legal world, law world, and the law follows what science says. You have to do that thing, not what I think. It has to be with some recommendations or why I given this treatment to the patient and which science back up that my decision. It should be always, so it should be always scientific treatment. So all these parameters need to be taken care in the casualty. So in short, if you ask me what are the functions of emergency, I will put in major and minor. In major treatment that I have already discussed, it should work 24/7, 365 days. Even if it is a leave period, it is 366 days. So it is never stopped. The doors are never closed. It provides immediate appropriate life-saving measures. It services both. It should be efficient as well as effective. That is also important. The outcome is also important. Not only treatment, but outcome is also important. It should be sensitive enough to have the sympathy to the patients, the persons who are accompanying with the patients. Subsidiary treatment, that it can provide the ambulatory services, because sometimes it happens that some part of treatment is not available in that hospital, or the patient doesn't want treatment here, they want to go in another hospital. So at that time, the ambulance service should be available nearby so that the transport can be done very easily. The portal services like that we are ambulation, what we have seen already. Then information and communication center has to be there so that, like, if you need blood, if you need plasma, whatever, that communication is also available in the casualty, so that time should not be wasted for all these things. And of course, education, training, and research is also important to make the future generations to be prepared for this emergency. The younger blood will be always replaced with the older. The older blood will be always replaced with the younger blood, because we require here speed and accuracy all the time. Again, I said that these are the functions, so it can be done with the alone. So it's always a administrative structure behind that, like medical superintendent along with his assistant, it will be there. As we have the HOD of emergency medicine, it is there. If this is not there, many hospital, the casualty medical officer takes care here, and associated with, along with that, there are associate casualty medical officers. So it's a team of doctors supported with the nursing staff, teaching staff, the public relation officers, communications like health workers, they are along with associated with them, supportive staff, even the porter, ground workers, the security guard, everyone is the part of casualty. And most of the places there is a police post is also there in major hospital. If it is not, the nearby police hospital is always available in case of medical legal cases is required. So there is always a steering committee, some emergency team, and one inpatient team. So once the emergency work is taken care by the hospital, in the casualty, the patient is stabilized, and then it's shifted to the inpatient team for further treatment. So again, this is actually a very good chart, but it has not been given properly, I think, here. So here you can say the emergency treatment, emergency care, unscheduled urgent care, safety, everything it demands of the emergency care. Patient comes to the emergency department. It's a flow chart of what we have discussed. It goes in triage and the room placement, diagnostic evaluation is done. Then either patient goes to home if you don't want to continue treatment, or the patient is disposed in specific appropriate ward like hospital or admit or ICU. And if it is not there, the resource or lack of ability, then it is ambulated to the place where the facilities are available. So this is the flow chart of acute care system, and I think this will be sufficient for to understand. And I said that everything, whatever we have discussed, the main central role is of CMO, that casualty medical officer here, because he provides the first aid treatment. He is the in charge. He provides immediate relief and management of the patients arriving in the medical surgical emergency. As we know, this kind of FIR, first medical contact with the patient. So he has to know, he should be very good in providing this kind of emergencies, the treatment for this kind of emergency. He can refer to appropriate department or to the other hospital if required. That we already seen. Again, the most important thing will come, that he has to attain all the medical legal formalities regarding the casualty cases. Because in hospital, it is not like that all the pool cases will come. Any kind of case is meant. And what is medical legal case? That we will come to know as we go further. We have that one section also. and so he has to attend those. Medical legal case, he has to be primarily responsible for the proper documentation of the casualty patients. As we said, it is the FIR, that is the first record. What happened to that medical legal case? What was the case? What are the injuries? What was the size? Whether they are morbid or not morbid? Everything you say n number of locations. The answer is in this documentation. So the documentation has to be very proper in casualty. And at the same time, he has to check all the equipments and backups are ready for any kind of emergency all the time. These documents are requirement is very high is because now you must have seen, okay, has to treat the patients also, he has to see all the equipments also, then he has to do other work also. Then how can he put the documentation? Yes, he has to give all the documentation properly, and with that, for that, they can take help of this kind of formats. These formats are in almost all hospitals, they have their own format. So it's kind of more yes or no kind of thing. It is a pre-format, so the points is not missed and the documentation is kept very properly. Ideally, this documentation should be always kept in the duplicate form or in the computer form so that it can be reproduced later on. So till now you must have seen that casualty medical officer only this, but it is central place of everything, all the hospital like receptionist, resuscitation, operating units, observation, all investigation modality. So it is playing the central role of all hospitals. So what are the legal issues in emergency medicine that comes to? First, it's consent. We know in hospital, for any reason, if you get admitted, if you are offered a treatment, the person has to give consent for that, that he should say, yes, okay, I am ready for this kind of treatment. That is called as consent. We'll go to that details, some details in that as the few slides. Patient should be confidential. Patient information should be always confidential. It should not be revealed unless asked by a law authority. Otherwise, the confidentiality has to be there. It should be complete, competent. There should not be any medical error. All medical legal records has to be kept for kept for the future references also. At the same time, there should be duty of care, giving advice, and if some persons don't want to have treatment in that hospital, then they should be given proper treatment till they are in the hospital, and then only they can go to the home by their own. So what is duty of care? Duty of care is not only the duty what the doctors do, but that duty has to be with the patient's best interest. Like that, whatever the procedure, whatever treatment is doctor is giving, that should give the benefit to the patient. It should be the best of the doctor's ability. Like we also know that we have seen that casualty medical officer the first time. Afterwards, there are multiple specialties also, but he should give the treatment with his best ability. Then only the results will be very good. If he has some problem, then he always asks for the help from some senior or help from some specialist. But till now, the first thing which is available with him, that he has to give the best of his efforts to give the treatment of the patient. And second, it should be appropriate to the situation. I can elaborate with this appropriate to the situation that you must be knowing in the last year, Italy, when there were huge number of patients coming with the corona in ICU, and they have declared that above 75 years, they are not going to treat the patients because they don't have that much of resources. This happened to the well-equipped country like Italy. So they have decided, okay, this is the situation that we are not able to treat more than 75% of patients. So this is the appropriate situation. So that decision has to be taken care by the medical officer. Okay, what is best in this present scenario, I need to give to the patient, and that is a treatment that is called as duty of care. And any breach in this duty of care, that will cause negligence. So I am building gradually towards the medical negligence. What is medical negligence? Is any breach in this duty of care, that is negligence. So what are the precautions taken here in the casualty? First is consent. Consent is first and most very important, because every person has right of his own life. Unless he says that, okay, I want to proceed for such kind of treatment, such kind of investigation, any kind of whatever, no one can force him to have that treatment. So consent is most important. At the same time, it's a right of the patient that his information should be very confidential between doctor and him. No third person should know that thing. At the same time, as our medical legal things, the collection and preservation of the samples like poisonings, the vomitings, the organ samples, they have to be kept they should be collected in proper way, they should be preserved in proper way, so that in the forensic investigation they require for the evaluation for the further things. So the collection is done there, so that is also important. And of course the medical legal records, again most important thing, because afterward there won't be any patient, there won't be, the doctor will be also live there. What remains is the records, and that record is producing, that record will give you the picture like what happened, and then you can prove or disprove whatever is required. Like we know in the Evidence Act, document is more important than the oral evidence. So documents is most important, documentation is most important. Coming to the consent, as we know, all the medical treatment requires patient's consent. He has his own right on his life, so he can decide whether he want to go or not. The consent may be implied, verbal, or written. What is mean by implied? Implied means if you come to the patient's doctor's OPD to have something, it's kind of implied consent. You have decided, okay, I have something, I need to get treated, so you come to the hospital, you come to the clinic of the doctor. He has given you some prescription. It is implied consent. Verbal consent is like, okay, doctor says that, okay, these are the things, these are the risks which will happen with the medicine, so you should not do that, you should not do that, or you should take this kind of precaution. This is a verbal trait. The written consent, again, written consents are most important, because many of the hospital admissions and major surgeries or major procedures, they require normally written consent, so that all the things which can occur problematic in the future, what is the pros, what are the cons, everything is written, informed, and then the consent can be taken. And involving the patient in decision making about their case, because as we know, because our constitution says that every person has right of his own, so the patient himself as far as possible should be involved in the consent process is required. And what are the valid consents? Valid consent is like the person who is giving consent should be legally competent, like a minor can give, mentally ill person can give, the person who is stuporous, disabled by drugs or alcohol, he can't give the valid consent. It must be informed, that everything has to be informed to the patient, to his understandable language, to his own local language, that has to be informed. It must be specific. Specific means what kind of disease you are having, you are saying about, what kind of treatment you are saying about, what kind of complications you are saying about. So it should be very specific rather than vague. यार कुछ भी हो सकता है, मर भी सकता है. It should not be like vague. It should be very specific about the percentage, what are the chances, what doctor thinks, and that has to be mentioned on the consent. It must be freely given. As law students, we must be know what is why freely is required. It should not be without any coercion, and it should be very free by the patient himself as far as possible, or by the guardians. That there should be any force on taking that giving that consent to get the treatment. And as I said, that consent must cover what is actually being done, so that is required. And here is the just, in short, if you ask me, it should be very clear, very accurate, it should be relevant, and it should have the material like treatment options. What are the other treatment? If you don't have this kind of treatment, what are the other treatment options available? What are the consequences of the treatment which we expect, either beneficial or bad, whatever. Or second, what are the consequences if you don't have that kind of treatment, if you don't opt for the treatment? What are risks? What are the advantages? Everything should be there in the consent. So consent, the consent taker should give all information to the patient. He should understand his own language and then give the consent, and then it is called as proper consent, written consent. But again, what I said, this is okay when you are dealing in the calm time. It's a cold cases, it's fine. But in emergency, it doesn't happen like that, because we have very limited time. And the problem with the difficult situation like children, mentally impaired, ill, drug affect, because in casualty, these are the cases which normally happens, like patient in the emergency department. Because situation is very less. It's not time that it's not that much of time that you can give to the patient, or sometimes they are not able to give that consent, they are not physically fit. So at that time, there are two words which are more important. Is the person having capacity to give the consent, or is the person is competent enough to give the consent? There is a difference between these two. For a regular thing, for a regular English, they are fine. But for us as a law, we can say what is the capacity? Capacity is like, as a doctor, I should decide it's a doctor's role to decide that, okay, the person is able to give the consent. He's understanding whatever I am saying. He's understanding the time place person. Is he oriented? This is the capacity. With that, he can judge the capacity of the person. If he says, if he decides, okay, he is satisfied that person can give the consent, then he should proceed with that. Competence is come with the court to determine. It's the law. Like a minor can't give the, he's not compatible to give consent. Like unconscious patient not give to consent. So these are the competency. So it's a court to determine the law. So these are the two faint difference between this capacity and competency. So as far as possible, the patient should have a good, the consent giver should have the capacity as well as competency to give the consent. So how will you determine capacity? You should have the doctor normally functionally says, what is the time, what is the place, where are you from, what is your name, what are, they ask this kind of question to see the functional assessment, what is the brain is working fine or not, whether he is able to understand the information what are giving to the patient, his ability to appreciate the situation and consequences, what happens to him, what happened to him, what is else, this kind of situation is able to understand, is able to rationally manipulate the information whatever doctor is saying, and able to communicate a choice. And with this, the capacity is determined and the consent is taken. For the children, the consent is like basically problem with the child. So as far as possible, always involve the parents for the consent for anything is required, except when there is an emergency life-saving treatment. As I said that previously, all the legal formalities can be at stop when the question is of saving the life. So if this is the question, all the consents and everything can be set apart. The procedure has to perform to save the life, but everything has to be properly documented, that so that if it's required by some other person, what was the situation, then this situation has to be proved. So that's why in any exception, these exceptions are important. In emergency and life-saving measures, the consent can be set apart, but treatment is most important. There are some places where consent is not required. As medical emergency, we have seen already in notifiable diseases, like in this present scenario, person having COVID-19 infection. In that place, the consent is not that much required because you need to treat the patient and you are treating as a mass. The immigrants, new admission to the prisons. If the court orders for the examination and treatment, consent is not required because court himself is the giving orders. Under section 53 of CRPC, can be examined the request of police by the use of force. If the police request, yes, the consent is not required, it has to be done. And also the members of armed forces on request for competent authority in writing. So anyway, that is not more our concern. These are the more things what we are going to see in the future. So consent is not required. And the most, again, one of the most important factor, most important point is normally is missed is consent is not required from the relative for conducting a medical legal post-mortem. If something happens, the patient is not able to sail through and patient dies, and the competent treatment authority, they are not sure what was the cause of death, or they feel that okay, there is some kind of medical legal aspect is there, they can order post-mortem of the patient. And for that, they don't need consent of the relatives to send a body for the post-mortem. These are the places where you don't require any consent for treatment. So these are the few photographs of our places. Like this is the casualty what we have seen already. This is a CT scan machine which is just beyond that, so that emergency treatment can be taken. These are the observational beds in side of casualty, so that the treatment will go on. And these are the emergency scan, so that the surgeries and small OT room emergency procedures can be done here immediately at the same place. So coming to medical legal case. So what is meant by medical legal case? I am not going into the definition, which is very tricky. I will give you simple language. Any case that has a medical any medical case with a legal implication for the attending doctor is a medical legal case. Any case which causes legal implication on the attending doctor is a medical legal case. So in fact, if you ask me, all cases are medical legal cases, because all cases which are admitted in the hospital, they can have some legal implications. So all cases should be treated as a medical legal case, but whether to register it as a medical legal case or not, that is important. So not all the cases should be registered as a medical legal case, but yes, when it comes for documentation, the consents and the level of care given to the patient, all cases should be taken as a medical legal case, and that's why it has to be optimal for all cases. There is no exception there. Okay. So again, consent is a medical legal case. This consent is not required. What we have seen already for conducting postmortem test is not required. So this part we have already seen. Now, what is the time limit for registration of medical legal case? Sometimes it happens that patient come to the casualty, there is no history available, or sometimes the history is concealed, but the doctor suspects some foul play, or he feels necessary that police should be informed about this case. Then the medical legal case has to be there. It can be done any time of admission, because sometimes it is not immediately coming to the mind, but after some time, maybe after few hours, or maybe in the evening, when in the second round, when you see the patient, you feel something, no, something is wrong with that. That time you should inform to the patient. That time MLC can be done. But as far as possible, there should not be any unnecessary delay. Delay is okay, but it should not be unnecessary, because sometimes it has happened that patient got admitted from the emergency department, but when in the ICU or in the ward, when the specialist doctor see, they feel that okay, no, this is not wrong, there is something is some foul play is there. That time also medical legal case can be filed, and if it is filed in some other place and then the patient shifted here, the same MLC case should be continued, the same MLC case should be there. And we know the importance of this thing, like in POSCO Act, what we are learning in POSCO, if the doctor feels that there is some problem happened with the child, then he should not wait anyone. He should inform the police that such and such patient has come to me, but I am suspecting this kind of thing, and it has to be informed to the police. If he fails to do that, it is a crime against that doctor. So they should be aware that when MLC needs to be done and how. And the patient, it will be whose decision that medical MLC needs to be done. Again, here the casualty medical officer, what we are seeing, emergency physician who is available, he has all the authority, independent authority to label a case of medical legal or not, because he has to take the decision. His decision should not be altered because of any external pressure like relatives or any kind of other pressures that okay, don't register a medical legal case, okay, this that about, but don't register. No, his decision should be final. He has to do without any force on him. And as I said, that sometimes it is not made in the on admission, but the suspicion is later on. That time also the medical legal case can be filed. So in medical legal case, again, the identification that need to be a file a medical legal case is important. CMO is important here. Then at the same time, register and report that medical legal case. In that case, as I told, the case examination, opinions, the documentation needs to be very appropriate, because with that case you need to go into court and prove, and whatever the questions asked you have to answer, and at the time your memory would not be that sharp to remember everything, so your documents will be there. That will help you to guide to the court. Your final opinion has to be written there. If final opinion is not there, the patient is unfortunately dead, then he has to go for the postmortem, so that the final opinion of the disease or whatever happened, that can be taken off. All the investigation and treatment needs to be properly documented, and the most important is preparation of record, because these records needs to be kept, because sometimes the cases will happen after 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line. So how long the medical records should be kept in the hospital? There are many evidences. The medical record is a documentary evidence which is important for the medical legal case, that we have seen already. There are various judgments that we know, because there was a lacuna in keeping this documentation, and that's why the judgments went against the doctor or the hospital, just because there was a non-maintenance of the medical record. So again, this is the most important, as I said, that afterwards it is the only documents which speaks. Nothing else is important. What I thought, not important. What you thought, not important. what the medical records said at that time, that is important. So records are immediately important. So there are various acts and directives which are given in India to maintain the medical records, how long they should be there. The most important use is Indian Medical Council practice. In 2002, there is Limitation Act, Consumer Protection Act. They are directed by General DGHS, Director of General Health Services. Then PCPNDT, prenatal diagnostic test, 1994. They also given some directions of the how long it should be kept. And along with that, Clinical Establishment Act, that also gives some light on how long it should be kept. So this is one journal. It was published. It's free journal. You can get anywhere. It was published in 2 years back, May 2019, and one of the person involved in this is Dr. KK Agrawal that we know recently. He was the president of IMA. He was very respectable cardiologist and doctor all over India. And this recent pandemic, he has given enormous treatment for all the directions for the corona patients. And just 2 before days, he died himself with the corona. And maybe many of you have seen the video clip that he was on oxygen, but at the same time, he was still treating the patients. He was still guiding the patients for in his last days also. So respect to him, Dr. KK Agrawal. Just going further, just to be a short thing, the Indian Medical Council, as I said, that is the most commonly practiced, that every physician should maintain at least 3 years from the date of treatment, indoor patients. 3 years document has to be kept. And in case of medical legal case, it has to be kept indefinite, ideally. Because some guidelines says it should be 10 years, some say it's 8 years. So better keep it indefinitely, and that's why computerized is better. If a request is made for the medical record by a patient side, then it has to provide within 72 hours to the patient whatever documents, whatever investigations, everything has to be provided within 72 hours. If it is fails here, then it is a crime. Important one thing again, whenever a medical certificate is issued, there should be always some identification mark of the patient, and or you can write identification mark, or you can write down some identification like Aadhaar card number or driving license number, that you have confirmed that it is the same patient. And always to keep a copy of certificate with you. So again, computerized is always better to keep, because later on it's the only document which is going to speak, not what you said. So all efforts should be made to computerize, and that also, as I said, in CMO also, when it is computerized, it's yes and no format. It is very simple for him also to keep all the record, so that you don't have to think all the time and write, okay, this point has missed, this point has missed. So as far as possible, it should be computerized. And also, as I said, in the Limitation Act, in section 24 of Consumer Protection Act, they say that maintain record for 2 years on OPD basis and 3 years for the other inpatient basis. But other like health regulation 1996, they say that it should be kept for 10 years. So as I said, that preferably kept indefinite, it's always better. And what is negligence? As I said initially, anything which is a deviation from your duty of care is a negligence, or commission of something which you are not supposed to, or omission of something that we are not supposed to. All these things can cause negligence. And what is negligence? Negligence can be in the duty, it can be the breach of duty, it can be harm. And I'm not going into detail of the negligence because it itself is a very huge topic. But negligence is basically failure on the part of the hospital side, and that can cause damage to the patient from anywhere, and that is medical negligence. And all this negligence and everything is proved on the basis of your records, and that's why records important. It's most important. Thank you. If any questions, I will like to take the questions also. So I tried myself to restrict myself to just minimal face value of things which I thought.
Yes.
Because everything, it's a very deep, you can go inside.
Yes.
Students, anybody is having anything to ask?
Rajendra sir, it was really wonderful presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I don't think students will be having any questions with this presentation.
Really. So, but Vanita, you can proceed.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you, Rajendra sir, and good afternoon, respected principal ma'am, and my colleague and dear students, participants. It's my indeed privilege to express a vote of thanks. So I, Assistant Professor Vanita Mohar, on behalf of Dr. D.Y. Patil Unitech Society's Dr. D.Y. Patil Law College, Pimpri, Pune, express my sincere gratitude towards today's speaker and today's session, Dr. Rajendra Patil sir, for enlightening our student participants on and also us on this topic that is role of hospital authority in forensic detection. Actually, where the syllabus requires the visit to the hospital, and today's situation which not allows us to visit as a student to the hospital, of course due to this COVID-19 pandemic, but for us it became possible due to the sir, that is our speaker, Dr. Rajendra Patil sir. As today's session was really sir like a practical, that is physical visit to the hospital. And once again big thanks or big thank you sir, as the session covered so many things, that is bulk of knowledge in very short time period, like what with the help of that slides and presentation, sir covered that structure and workflow of the hospital, structure and workflow of the emergency department, legal issues in the emergency department, that consents, then medico legal cases, then medical record, medical negligence, etc. So thank you very much sir. I also express my sincere gratitude to our management of Dr. D.Y. Patil Unitech Society for their support, and I also express my sincere gratitude and thank you to our respected and beloved principal ma'am, Dr. Ujjwala Shinde, for her support and encouragement. I express my sincere thanks to all the faculty members, of course, without whose support this type of program is not get success. I express my sincere thanks, which is not last but not least, that is dear participant students. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajendra sir, for conducting this session. And thank you, teachers. Thank you, madam, for organizing this session.
Thank you.
We will end up.
One announcement for the students regarding the feedback form. Ajay sir.
Yes, I have shared the link.
Yes. So
I have shared
link
the
is,
link.
yes. Students, link is there in the chat box. So we'll continue the meeting on for the filling of that attendance and feedback form. So before leaving the meeting, please give your feedback and then leave the meeting. Thank you, ma'am.
Good to see you, Anita.
येस मॅम, मला पण छान वाटलं तुम्हाला बघून.
अगं रोज बघते ना.
हो ना, पण ते आता अल्टरनेट डे मुळे कुठे एक दिवस नाही बघायला मिळत ना.
गुड आफ्टरनून मैम.
अरे यू अच्छा वनीता को बोल रही.
विजेता मैम, आवाज विजेता मैम की आ रही है, मुझे दिख नहीं रही. एक सेकेंड ना, मैं
नहीं, मैं हूँ ना.
हाँ, यस.
Yes, good afternoon all. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Yes.
And she's at home?
Yes.
Alternative duty.
सर वेरी नाइस सेशन सर। फॉरेंसिक के बारे में मतलब इतनी इंफॉर्मेशन हमें नहीं है, इतनी मतलब मेडिकल साइंस और फॉरेंसिक, बट
And once again, thanks goes to ma'am only. So keep on. She used to tell why can't we have
Rajendra sir accepted our invitation and he
Yes.
came here, he enlightened us as well as our students. That was a great thing.
yes,
Because the knowledge, by reading books, we will not get this knowledge.
This knowledge.
Practical experience is necessary, and we must thank to Rajendra sir that he has accepted our invitation and he came.
Yes. If it would have been a COVID situation, then sir agreed also to show
physically.
the whole hospital. Yes, yes. So, I mean, straightforward, he told, I'll, explain the whole hospital, this thing. But unfortunate about our students. So, students are requesting next year, in case if such a physical visit are there, you people give us an opportunity, sir. So I told definitely. So no doubt. Students are students forever, so that we can
Yes.
give an opportunity. So I hope all students are filled your feedback form.
yes, sir.
Students, you can leave the meeting.
Yes.
After
And
filling the form.
complete report आप लोग बना दो. I'll guide you people how to prepare it.
Sir, if you have recorded this lecture or webinar, can you share the link to the our?
So let me see. Our Ajay sir most probably have an idea about it.
It will be helpful to
in case if it
prepare
is
our
the
report.
case.
Yes.
In case if it is the case, then I will let you know, because he taken the pain for it, and let us see whether he record it or not. And even Vanita ma'am also. So we'll see to it about the recording, and I will share the link. Okay then?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
I hope everybody filled the form. Pratima? Prajwal? Ajay sir, you have to wait for some time. Okay.
वनीता मैम कल आने वाले हो ना? वनीता मैम